Thank you for tuning in. With the way that things are evolving in our lifestyles and the conditions that exist, especially when it comes down to understanding culture and the relationship to how it deals with our heritage, this gentleman that I'm sitting with has been pretty much a pioneer in relationship to his generation of bringing out the message that we need answers. And what those answers are based upon how we are able to articulate our cultural heritage and understand how it affects our future. We're here now with Tarek Shabazz.
Yes.
Shabazz, I really appreciate it again. You know, Tarek is a promising individual and has been very profound in his interest of wanting to make sure that we get the right answers, especially when it comes down to social issues and some of the things that are in relationship to what you have been doing. Now, are you a graduate yet?
Yes, I graduated from Montclair State University.
Okay.
First from Union County College, and then I went on to graduate from Montclair State.
Mm-hmm. Now, what did you major in?
Political science.
Okay.
And I had a minor in film.
Now, was there any relationship of history involved with your education process?
What do you mean?
I mean, like, did you delve into history as being one of the areas that you needed to have some kind of influence or exposure to?
Of course, because the study of politics, you know, of course, is history as well. So it's just the history of politics and the science of elections, the science of political theory and things of that nature. So it's a lot of history in there. And actually, that's why I minored in film, because being a political activist in a town like this, and also helping out with certain issues in Newark, you realize that not everyone is going to have time to read books and things of that nature. So film is a different medium that you can put information in and still reach the people. So that was the main reason why I minored in film, because the issues in the history that I was uncovering and exploring while trying to get my degree, I said we can put this into film and get these messages and this history of the people to the people, you know.
Now, you also have a very strong influence. Many members of your family were writers. I remember a panel discussion that we were in that you really excited me, sharing with us about how it influenced your life and where it really put your mindset into wanting to be part of the story. Share with us exactly who those individuals are.
I guess the most well-known was my big cousin, Sekou Sundiata. He was actually a poet. You know, he's gone from us now. But he was a poet, spoken word artist as well, and he really put, you know, it on CD, what we call audiature. And he was probably the most profound influence in terms of the professional writers or the well-known writers in my family. But more importantly, my mother. You know, at a very young age, my mother ensured that I knew how to read. If you ever come around my family, they'll talk about that a lot, how Jacquier was very serious about me learning how to read, me being able to write effectively. And then just as you get older and you see the power of the word and how some of the most profound folk in our history as Afro-Americans here in this country have been the writers. When we look at Fred Douglass, when we look at Amiri Baraka, when we look at Du Bois, you know, these brothers are profound writers, or, you know. So we understand the importance of writing, that it's with folk for a longer time. You know, the word is fleeting. Me and you speaking, it'll be over in a minute. But if we write it down, or if we record it in another way, it'll be here for a longer period of time. And it gives you an opportunity to really flesh out your thoughts. You know, if you're talking to someone and you're trying to explain a concept or a theory, you might be sharp, but can you really write it down and explain it and break it down like it needs to be broken down? And so that's very important for us to do. So writing in my family has always been very important. You know, how do I know my great-grandmother's story, who grew up in South Carolina? How do I know those stories? And those stories are going to be read by myself and my children. So we just understand that part.
And in terms of building the dynamics of the village concept, which in many classic cases, what we're beginning to recognize is that that is how our history was transferred from generation to generation. If it was not just basically from a talking history, it was from something that was written in literature. And I agree with you. It's another type of, I would say, transition in regard to technology taking an absolute protocol in our lifestyles. And I think that it really defines now the reality behind the importance of people who did leave information, because it drove a sense of awareness. And that's what is so important about the relationship that you are really involving yourself with. And it emphasizes a great deal of value when it comes down to your generation, and as we were talking earlier, you're in your early 30s.
Oh, I'm actually 30, yep.
Okay.
Right on the dot.
And see, and I'm 50, so I'm 20 years ahead. And now the whole relationship of what we are doing together is going to be a story.
Absolutely.
that is going to be part of a history. And I often say, like the true testaments of the Gospels were never closed. They just stopped putting them together. And if you put your testament together and I put my testament together, it in a sense is a Bible. My strength in relationship to understanding spirituality and faith has been more profound in my livelihood of being consistent and certainly showing the relationship of trust. How do you see that idea of concern being effectively drawn into your work?
Well, being concerned is the basis of the work. My job, actually, I work at the Covenant House, which is a shelter for homeless youth between the ages of 18 and 21. You have to be concerned to do that work. To be effective, I'm not going to say you have to be concerned just to be there, because obviously there's some folk there who are not necessarily there because they are concerned.
As far as mentoring or really taking and nurturing them towards a direction that they need to get out. Some people just go to work.
Yeah, they just go to work. And, and we have the concept that, if you're here, you have to be here because you love it, because it's not for the money, which is not necessarily true. Folk work at Burger King not because they love burgers, but they need a job and they need a paycheck. And though the paycheck is not that big, it's consistent.
That's right.
So that's not necessarily true. But you have to care, and caring has to be rooted in the knowledge, right? I can't say I really love you without knowing you. Some folks say they love these kids, but how do you really love them if you do not know their condition, if you do not know where they come from, and if you do not have a desire to better the condition where they come from? Not necessarily to extract the kids from their condition and send them somewhere else. Because if you're from around here, you understand that that's most likely not going to happen. That most of the people who live here are going to live here, or going to raise their families here, or going to work here. And, eventually we're going to die here. And with that understanding, that's where my caring is rooted in an understanding of our situation and of our condition. And that's why we do what we do. Because if we didn't care, then we could go get some jobs and just relax and be some Negroes, but we reject that. We don't want to do that. We want to better this condition simply because we know that we can do it, right? That's what our history as Afro-Americans and Latinos and working class folk in this country tell us, that we can do it. When we put our mind to affecting change, it becomes very, possible. And so I care, but also I have the knowledge that we can change the condition of our communities and of our people. And when we practice unity, we can do it much quicker, So the work that I try to do, not only at my job, but also in the community, is very informed by caring. It's very informed by caring, not only for the community at large, but also my immediate family. We have to live here. We're not going anywhere. So it's imperative that we try to change the situation so that our children have a better place to live, our elders have a better place to grow, and just a place that is conducive to learning, a place that is conducive to understanding who you are, things of that nature. So that's that motivation.
Now, you've also really put a lot of your effort into trying to identify a way in which people can understand social activities involving a relationship from a socialistic basis. And the whole criteria, when we get into political dynamics, when we talk about the liberals and the conservatives and the Republicans and the Democrats and things of that nature, there's always a conflict or a competition.
Mm-hmm.
Why are you so involved with wanting to develop a better social system?
Yeah. Well, because it's part of this holistic change that we talk about, right? We have to have a holistic change. We just can't. Sometimes it's so compartmentalized, our thinking, that we don't understand how this compartment informs another compartment, right? So when we look at the political and the social, more so the political, we believe that that's the overarching thing, right? That's the overarching thing, and that overarching thing then breaks down into those smaller parts of economics, of culture, of the social relationship of folk. So in order to affect all of that, our thinking has to be a little bit broader so we can ensure that those problems that we're talking about, they are addressed. Mm-hmm. For instance, let's look at our situation here in the township that I live, Irvington. Because we lack vision politically, everything else falls by the wayside. Right? Mm-hmm. If you lack vision politically, that means
if you haven't been able to identify to vision.
Yeah.
Because there is activity that go on.
Yeah.
Like I hear, well, the mayor or the city council don't do anything, but I don't hear about the people who say, well, he has done this or this has been done. We can get more out of it.
Yeah. But what we're talking about, we're not just talking about individual ideas, things that
right, because I mean, like, I agree with you. It's not Irvington. This is, we're talking socialistically.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean, though. Yeah. Why do we always attempt to follow through with the glass being half empty instead of half full?
Yeah, because we know that it's half full. We know that it's half full in certain instances, but overall, we cannot say that this is a good situation. Mm-hmm. We understand that economically, families are not doing good. Mm-hmm. Educationally, we're not doing good.
But isn't it because of the attitude? I mean, conservatism says that, we should not put so much of an effort to provide resources for people who have the capabilities of doing for themselves.
Yeah. Well, what people have the ability to do for themselves. We're talking about like people, especially in we can look at specific things. We can talk about general things, but we have concrete examples here in this town, in towns like it, that do we really believe that the folk running around here have the resources to do what's necessary to pull themselves up? What King say about bootstraps, this folk ain't got no boots. So that's the condition. That's the condition. And when we're talking about vision, we're not talking about isolated good things that folk are doing, but what is the overall vision of our elected officials or our leaders? Is it a progressive idea?
Well, why don't you define it? A progressive idea. Well, we're talking about an idea that is more egalitarian and one that now,
is...
you got to break that down.
Okay.
Egalitarian.
That's right. We'll come back to that. But more so, the idea that our elected officials and also our leaders of organizations, of our institutions, their primary role has to be to protect the resources of the people and ensure that the people are getting their fair share of resources, right? That it's not corporations who should run our town. It's not businessmen who should get a break. It's the people that have to be invested in, and the people have to be rebuilt. The most important infrastructure in these towns are not necessarily roads and buildings. The most important infrastructure that you need, part of the infrastructure, are the people. That's where you're going to get your greatest return if you invest in the people. So we have to ask, do we believe that the children of Irvington, that the working adults of Irvington, in towns like it, have they been invested in properly?
So in terms of it being a socialistic kind environment, we would have to really change the bureaucracy.
Well, yeah, not only the bureaucracy, because the bureaucracy is only going to be a byproduct of the ideology, right? So what is the ideology? That's what we're getting back to, the overarching thing of your political theory. Not because you might have somebody like as retrograde as our governor is, somebody might think that he had a progressive policy, or we might just get so crazy that he half-mast the flags for Whitney, right? So we're looking at that individual act, but that's not what's really important. What's important is what is his overall theory.
Or was it really that important to emphasize?
Yeah, that's right.
Because he did a half-mast for a soldier that was killed in the war.
Absolutely.
And there are thousands of soldiers killed in the war.
Then he take your kid's school money.
Well, I mean, then that's another level of bureaucracy, excuse me. But I agree with you when it comes down to how society picks and matches what they think is important.
That's right.
Especially when it sensationalizes a relationship that they try to exploit.
Yeah, yeah.
The point in it being is that what was done in that fashion at that time heightened a condition that gave a lot of publicity. It wasn't really necessary because of the real values that are important.
Absolutely.
And when we talk about the real value that's important is the reality behind, well, he will pretty much say, and I follow the governor as well, that it wasn't conditionally taking the money away from the children. It was really saving an effort of not wasting it in areas that he had no control or we have no control over. And when we look at it from that standpoint, we have leaders such as, let's say, Mayor Bowser, who says, yeah, but why are you taking it away to give it back? Yeah. Because you know that we need it.
Yeah. Well, of course, the thing is, not to get too far into that, is that back to what do these people believe? Do they believe in more democracy or less democracy? Do they believe that the people understand their issues and can come up with their own problems, or they don't believe that? That's what we are.
You're right about that.
See, and the thing is, we disagree with this guy ideologically, right? We're going to disagree with that,
Well, politically, because it's competitive. Yeah. It's like, well, this is my point of view and that's your point of view.
But it's not simply rooted in a vying for favor with the mass body. That's not what it is. It's, are you on the side? For instance, there's an essay that I read, and it's on the responsibility of the writer. And the first question that's asked in the essay is, for whom are you writing, right? So in politics, we can say the same thing. I'm a politician. So what's my role of the politician? And you got to say, well, for whom is he representing? So do we believe that someone like Governor Christie or your local mayor or your councilman, for whom are they fighting? Whom do they represent? And that's a very important question. Who do they represent business interests? Do they represent religious folk, or do they represent the mass body of the people? And that's the question that we have to ask ourselves. Are your local officials representing the best needs of the people?
But isn't that one of the reasons why we have such a condition of the level of interest groups that exist, that there's no one interest groups that can focus on any one particular issue, so we have to emphasize the need to continue to build more?
Well, the interest groups. The thing with the interest groups, there are very various amounts of interest groups. So then the duty for us becomes the united front, right? Unity without uniformity. So we agree on several points, and we're going to sit in this room until we reach a consensus on the others. You understand? Because we have that overarching theme of agreeing that the resources belong to the people, that education is a right, that healthcare is a right, that decent housing is a right, that jobs for folk are a right. So we agree on those things. Now, you're going to have some people who do not agree on those things. Theoretically, they're just not with that. So how can they necessarily be your allies in this fight for more democracy, for expanding the concept of democracy? Because, Herb, no matter what folk think, that's what we've been fighting for since we got here.
Right.
For greater democracy, to expand democracy. When brothers and sisters were trying to get off a plantation, right, they said, wait, what you said on that paper is not applying to me right now? No, I want it to apply. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. What King said. I just want you to live up to what you wrote on paper.
Right. Yeah, right.
So what is that? That's the concept of expanding these principles that you said are very important, are the fundamentals of this country, but they have never applied to me.
Right.
So I'm going to fight so that they do apply. You know, so are those who represent us fighting to ensure that those principles of so-called American democracy apply to you and I? You know, because when we walk down these streets, right, and when we know that the condition, the material condition, changes from a block in Irvington to the next block in Maplewood, we know that somebody doesn't believe that the principles that apply to them apply to us. You know, somebody can't believe that, you know, because you have to be angry, you have to be upset that this condition is like this. And how do we know that you're upset? How do we know that you're concerned if you are not letting us know that you're concerned? You know, how many elected officials, Afro-American, Latino elected officials, when all of this cutting was going on, all of these austerity measures were going on, came out together vocally and said, we resist this. This ain't good for our towns. Or to say, yes, this is good for our towns. But let us know what you think. Not be so concerned what folk down in Trenton going to say to you or how they going to respond to you on a local level.
Right.
So you're more beholden to folk who don't live here, who ain't going to never live here, than you are to the people who actually live here, who actually voted for you, who actually pay taxes, who actually are going to protect you when them folk attack you anyway.
Right.
You know, so that's
how do you set your priorities?
The priorities,
when it comes to your
absolutely.
idea of representation.
Yeah,
If you're just tuning in, we're here with Tarek Shabazz, and we're focusing on raising awareness in our communities, and it really comes down from a generational effect. There was always this thing when I was growing up that we had this gap of generational involvement, and now with technology, the synergy is beginning to rise. But you know, you shared with us that you're part of the I would say mentoring aspects at Covenant House, which is idealistically a social program that takes youth who are disenfranchised and give them an opportunity to find a direction that's positive in their lifestyle. If you notice some of the things that many of those youth conditionally lack and need, explain to me exactly where does it separate from the people who aren't in there?
Okay. Well, first of all, these people homeless. These young folk are homeless.
What caused their homelessness?
Well, there are several issues. You know, number one, well, it's not number one, but substance abuse, not necessarily on their part, but on family members. A destruction of the family by some social service organizations that we have in this country.
That actually is the bureaucracy itself.
Yeah, absolutely. But the main thing is that they come from oppressed communities, right? Everybody's children are not homeless. That's what we got to understand. Everybody's children do not live with their aunts, with their grandmothers, and with their cousins, because you're homeless then, you know. Even if you and your mother and your father had to move in with your aunt for a few months, you guys were homeless at that period of time. So the thing that is common with all of them are that they are from these downtrodden communities that have been attacked socially, that have been underdeveloped economically and educationally, right? So we have a lot of young people who do not have their high school diplomas, who can't read past a second or third grade level. This stuff is consistent, and this is consistent with young people who are not in our facility as well. right? So when we say, well, what is the most consistent thing? What is the common denominator? The common denominator are their poor Afro-American Latino children, right? That come from communities that have not been invested in, that have not, in terms of economics, in terms of education, and a lot of them are not aware of who they are. You know, because if you understand,
which systemically is normal.
Yeah, that's right. It's a byproduct. It's a byproduct of coming from these communities who that have been attacked. That have been, because we can't get away from that. You know, Newark and Irvington, Orange and East Orange are not in their condition because black folk and Latino folk just don't want to do nothing, right? People benefit from our suffering.
You know, and I want to get into that idea of the fact of people benefiting from our suffering and why these programs continue to exist without there being any kind of way in which we can eliminate them from being there. When we look at...
but we don't want to eliminate the programs, we want to eliminate the conditions.
Well, that's what I mean, though, when I say in order for the program to be eliminated, the condition has to not exist.
Yeah.
But we continue to emphasize existing programs for the condition. We look at the whole idea of the concept that population growth is not so much anymore on birth. It's really on migration or integration or in as much immigration. And there's a lot of immigration that is not really being characterized in a manner that helps individuals. It literally alienates them. Share with me your point of view on the integration of immigration in a migrated community.
Yeah. Well, we see the brothers from the other communities coming here. We see them coming. And one must ask, why are they here? Why are they here? Why are the brothers from Central and South America coming to Irvington? Why are the young Haitian folk, why are the Haitian families coming to Irvington? In America in general. And the main reason is because their countries have been underdeveloped. So I'm not mad at the brother from Mexico.
Well, because of America being America.
Yeah. Well,
America's always been a safe haven.
Well, not just a safe haven. Not just a safe haven. It's been an imperialist power, because that's the root of that, right? That's the root of underdevelopment in Mexico. All of the countries that these people are coming from, right? You say, well, why are they here? Why are they here? Well, your country underdeveloped their country. Your country has exploited their country, and now they're just trying to come get a piece and benefit from the work that they've already done back home in many instances, you know. So we have a very conservative element in our community that tries to pin working class people against working class people. But we have to know that that's a trick bag. We understand that that's a trick bag. We understand that the same concept that African slaves undercut European indentured servants. That's what's going on. We see an exploited workforce being used to try to undercut another workforce, right? So what we have is someone who has put a crumb on the table for you and I to fight over, when all you and I have to do is unite and go get the whole damn pie. Right? And that has to be that. But we can't
stop competing against one another over something that we can have more of.
That we can have all of, right? You know, this is what they talk about, this 99%, right?
Right, yeah.
You know, these people who control this country and who control our communities, you know, it's a little bit of them. There's a little bit of them. It's just that you and I are asleep, we're uneducated, and we're ignorant to how much power we really have. And when we realize what type of power we have and we begin to think about the solutions to the problems, then ball game is over. That's why they fight you so hard to be ignorant. You know, that's why they want control of your education, so they can tailor the education so that you will never be mindful, that you will always be connected from the other parts. You know, so why are corporations concerned with public education in the ghetto? You have never been concerned with that. You're concerned with that now because you're trying to control what the folk think, number one, and number two, you want access to public money that you did not have access to before. You done destroyed your so-called private markets, right? You destroyed them with your limitless appetite and greed, and now you want access to public money. You couldn't own Irvington High School before. But with the advent of charter school, private people can own it.
Well, I mean, I agree with you in terms of looking at it from the aspects of why would corporate want to take advantage of educational economics, and to say you will. But I don't think it just stops at education. I think the assault in relationship to controlling the economics of our system is also being incorporated from the abuse that we have in healthcare. Healthcare is more vital in our lifestyles than trying to understand what goes on in education. You can create your own educational environment. There are a number of people who have homeschooling. But there are not that many people who have home health care. You know what I mean? In terms of knowing how to adequately care for an individual just by the basis of what you have experienced in life. Like I can sit down and educate my son or my daughter how to read. I can sit down and educate my son or daughter how to be able to identify certain areas that are important to their lifestyle just by virtue of, my maturity. But I could never heal my child of a sickness as well as a medical professional could.
Well, the thing, like you said, they are one and the same. Because the folk who want public education or who want health care not going to say, we're going to take health here, we're going to leave public education to you.
Right, you can't.
You're not going to do that. And the thing is, the pillar to good health is going to be proper education, right? A pillar to health, good health, is going to be eating right. Is going to be eating the proper foods, the proper nutrition, not eating as much. All of these things that education can provide. There are going to be some things that we're not going to just be able to deal with by eating properly. But it's going to take a lot of the ailments away. But the concept is that the people have the right to seize these institutions and organizations, right? That we have a right to run our own educational system, that we have a right to decent health care, proper health care. And what I'm saying is that those who oppose that do not believe that we have a right to that. They don't believe that you have a right to proper education. You got the right to the type of education that you can afford.
The only way I can differ with that is that on many instances is that you have the right to choose what kind of education that you would want to have.
Who?
Or
who has a right?
Well, you as an individual. As an individual, we have the right and we have the ability to choose the type of education. We should have the opportunity for choice.
What do you mean by choice?
Well, in terms of if you want your child to go to a better school, you have the choice to send your child to a better school. Where it limits
you should have a choice?
You do have a choice. Where you're limited is economically. You may not be able to afford those choices.
So that's not a choice?
Well, looking at it from the level of analyzing it, you're correct. It's not a choice if the limitation is something that you don't have, but it is a choice if the limitation is something that you can obviously acquire.
Well, this is what we have the choice to do. We have the choice to resist and fight these folk and take control of our resources and ensure that the schools that our children are obligated to go to because of the communities that we live in are adequate.
Well, I look at it. Earlier this month rather, the NAACP hosted a town hall meeting, and I spoke with the conference president of New York, Hazel Dukes, and she's been a profound advocate, and the New Jersey conference president, James Harris, has been a profound advocate, and the NAACP in itself is a profound advocate of public education. And I said to her, well, you have organizations like the 100 Black Men, and the Urban League, and others that are actually investing in this charter school institution. But you all have taken a stand against it. Yes. I said, why aren't you creating your own involvement in the new structure of education as they have. And her answer was that because our priority of education is public education.
Very true.
We want to protect public education.
Very true.
So here we have a standard that is saying, okay, that's all good, said and done, but we still have a priority of responsibility here that eliminates that factor of saying that those who feel that they can have access to a choice can get that choice, but then there's still one that doesn't.
So what is, okay, when we talk about this choice, because number one, we do have a responsibility to public education. And you see white folk in suburban areas resisting charter schools with all their might. Now, they're
right,
but they're not made the poster childs. When
right.
white people in suburban communities resist charter schools, they're not made the poster childs of, oh, they don't want their children to succeed. They only do that to black people and Latinos, right? That's number one. Number two is we disagree with charter schools, not because there are not some good charter schools and some people doing some good things. We disagree with it fundamentally of what it is about. What is it about? And we talk about choice, but why are we not given the choice to develop our public educational system? Look, man, in America, you know, we flip things sometimes, right? In America, the suburbs is where you want to live, right? In other Western industrialized nations, the city is where you want to live.
The urban environment.
That's right.
Yeah.
In America, the public university, the private schools are the hot thing. In other countries, the best universities, they are public. The Sorbonne is public. Oxford is public. Cambridge is public. You know, universities in Africa, the best universities are public, right? So we flip that thing. So now what we're going to do, and number one, I don't argue with parents about charter schools because I know they want their children to receive better education. But number one, we know they're being tricked because the numbers have come back and there's no clear, decisive answer that charter schools are better. We know that. We know that there are underqualified teachers at charter schools. We know that. We know that charter schools do not accept everyone. We know that. We know there are tactics being used to get children who are not performing well out of those charter schools. We know that. And we know that they are using public dollars to fund private ideas about education that have not been agreed upon by the mass body of the people. So what is that? That's anti-democratic, right? That's anti-democratic. You're going to take my money. Number one, you're going to tell me I can't come, right? Number two, you're going to tell me that this is what you're going to teach, these are the philosophies, and you're not going to even pass it with me. So what I'm saying is that you might have some instances where there are good things happening at charter schools or whatever. But fundamentally, we disagree with the anti-democratic practices and processes of the charter school movement. And when you look at the root, who has been behind the charter school movement? Who has funded this charter school movement? And then we have to ask, do they really care about Afro-American, Latino, poor, working-class white children? Education? Absolutely not. Because the same corporations that want to back charter school refuse to pay property tax in these towns. So we know that they don't care nothing about your education. We know that in Newark they have $1 billion school budget and folk want a piece of that, right? One thing I will give the folk in Irvington, they have been able to keep charter schools pretty much, not completely out of Irvington, but pretty much out.
Well, no, it isn't unfortunately, when you have small towns like Irvington and East Orange, who really have very few ratables, don't have a lot of return in terms of businesses providing a tax base that can be used for the socioeconomics of the communities, they have to limit themselves as to what it is that they do. Irvington only has one high school.
Yes.
But in order for them to really substantially come up with a concept that can help expand that high school, or even as much get resources that will help build the infrastructure or correct the problems in the infrastructure, is to try to find other alternatives. Right now, because the emphasis in the charter school and the government itself is pointing it the financing in that direction, you really have to identify with where your needs are opposed to where your ideology is.
Yeah.
And therefore, it is a limited environment that you have to work with. So there are a number of charters that are beginning to conditionally build a opportunity to exist here in Irvington, for instance. But substantially enough, it still is a problem in terms of government standards, creating a competitive relationship of education opposed to expanding its way in which it can deal with the resources that are needed to educate the children.
Yeah. And so do we believe that we have enough resources in Irvington to educate our children? There's room for improvement. We have to be able, but that's where leadership comes in, you know. Leadership, go get the resources. Right?
Well, to identify,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, like there's a needs assessment there, most definitely, that we're limited to as well. For, you know, and I want to stay on our conversation and really moving forward in it, where we can basically develop a concept that can be rewarding in regard to the relationship that We Care Partners puts into this media environment, and what you have already introduced as an area of concern, and you have a very good following behind it. What are some dynamics that you're really looking at doing in terms of participating in the change?
Okay, yes, that's a good question. Well, number one, I'm a district leader here in the township of Irvington in the 9th district of the South Ward.
Okay.
My politics are a little bit different, so this time in June they kicked me off the line. So I'll be running off the line in June. But what we want to do, the folk that I work with and myself, what we want to do is, number one, raise the political awareness of the folk in this town. Like, you have to be an educated electorate, because then the wool cannot get pulled over your eyes. So there are various ways that we can do that. Political education classes twice a week on Saturdays. But what we find out is that we don't have the resources or the space, right? We do block cleanups. Our first block cleanup this year will be May 19th, which is Malcolm's birthday. We're going to do that in the 9th district of the South Ward of Irvington on Grove Street and Nye Avenue. The Senior Wellness Walk is when we're going to get the elders together in Irvington Park with young people and walk around the park so we can improve health. So we can, my sister-in-law, two of my sister-in-laws are nurses, so we can get the blood sugar tested. We can get the high blood pressure tested. She's also a nutritionist. So what are the foods that our elders should be eating? And what should they be staying away from? A football camp right here in Irvington Park over the summer with the new field that we got from the county. Also, a literacy program, Education for Liberation. The first piece that we worked on was the Education for Liberation Conference, Let's Get Free. And out of that, many things came out. And one of the most important things is myself and a teacher in Newark, a sister by the name of Leah Owens, we developed a literacy program called Education for Liberation.
Okay.
Again, resources is not the problem. We got the teachers who are willing to do it, but where's the space in this town that we have access to? So those are just some of the things. Block cleanups, Senior Wellness Walk, football camps that tie not only the athletic, but also the scholarship. What is the philosophy of football and how can we translate that into the philosophy of life? What are the principles that...
Yeah, you're really talking about something that you're defining charter. You are. Yeah, you're defining that element of the opportunity.
It sounds like public too, though.
Well, no. Well, charter within itself was supposed to work within a public environment. It's never supposed to be competitive.
Yeah.
It became competitive when the powers that be saw that it could be an economic potential. But the reality of it is supposed to have been one, not a separate entity.
But what are those principles that I just said?
Well, the principles are
charter.
Cooperative economics, independent relationships of being able to lift up and build communities.
But why is that not public?
It
Why would you not say that as
but
public
I'm
education?
saying that it is a opportunity for people to choose these relationships that are publicly going to be a benefit to them. And it in itself has the element of helping to raise the communities to a better level. So I'm not
So
I'm not saying that it's a liberal. I'm not saying that it's a conservative. I'm not saying that it's a Democrat or Republican.
But what I want to clear
what
up,
I'm trying to say is that it's not political.
Yeah.
What this is a part of the relationship of community.
Yeah, okay, but let's back up a little bit because the things that I'm talking about, number one, are outside the school.
Well, let me use it like this, right? One of the concepts that we discussed at the time when my advocacy for choice in education, freedom of education.
Yeah.
Education is free. It's supposed to be free, but you should have choices. Is that, let's say the dynamics of what you're just talking about in terms of teaching individuals to play the athletic sport of football, you still have to break down mathematics to them.
Absolutely.
You still have to
Absolutely.
give them an understanding of physics and health and wellness. You know, you have to build all these basic concepts of science, of literature, knowing how to read the play, knowing how to do the concepts of symbols. And but you define it in that way, opposed to I'm going to give you a playbook. You're going to go and play this game, and we're going to fight until we win.
And that's what they've been doing in public education. Since black people.
So that's what I'm saying, and that's what I mean. That the whole idea of charter was not to take away from public education. It was to do exactly what you're talking about. It was supposed to be community.
Can't divorce. Yeah, but we can't divorce what it is from what the original theory was. And I would even challenge you on what the original theory was just by determining who came up with that original theory. Okay. You know, these right-wing evangelical folk who came up with this thing, who came up with these charter things. And so when we're talking about public education, we're talking about if you and I come up with concepts that we think will be advantageous to our children, right? We can take it to the school board and we can get it implemented, especially in a town like this.
Or we can become cooperative in our community and fund it ourselves.
No. See, the thing is, in towns where you are funding it yourself when you pay your taxes, and you got $1 billion school budget, so there's no need to raise no extra money. So the thing is, we have a concept that these resources are not our resources, right? That school budget money is not ours. That's not true. That is our money. So when we have a all-black school board in a town like we have, right? Why is Amstat legislation not being implemented? Don't talk to me about no charter school when you're not even implementing legislation that will teach our children who they are and what their role in society is. If you ever read Du Bois had an essay called The Negro College. And in the essay, he lays out the question because, you know, what should a Negro college do? What should a Negro college be about? And one of his detractors said that the Negro college should just be a college that black people happen to go to. And Du Bois said, no. The Negro college has to start with the Negro problem. It has to start at examining the problem of the Negro people. It has to use the Negro language. It has to start from a perspective that keeps in mind black people's history. And then he gave the other examples. He said a French university is a university where they speak French, where they use French history, and where they view the world's problems or the world's relationship in relationship to France. So he said our education should be nothing short. So, right, because we're in a town that we don't have this a diversity on our school board, right? They're all black folk, you know. So why aren't these innovative ideas being implemented here? Why don't we have the annual innovative educational ideas conference in Irvington? Why don't we have that? You have, who's blocking you? Not only are they all black, they're all from the same team. So where is the resistance for you to get concrete things done? And that's why in the beginning we talked about the lack of vision. Not necessarily what you're doing here and there, but what is your overall vision for this town? What is your do we have enough ESL teachers? Because we have Central and South American children here. We have Haitian children here who speak French. Do we have enough ESL teachers? Are we teaching them the commonality of their heritage with so we can stomp out the divisions or the superficial divisions in elementary school, right? Are we doing that? And if we are not doing that, what are actually the progressive and insightful innovations in education that we're going to do here, you know? So, and this is where we are, right? In this town and others like it. We're different from Newark. We don't have many of the warring factions that might block simply because they disagree team-wise. We don't have that. You know, one team runs this town.
Well,
in terms of education.
I agree.
So why you ain't getting nothing? Why you ain't getting nothing done?
What is it that can really happen to create the new energy that's important for not only a town like Irvington, but a country like America? And we have sat and shared ideas and concepts, and we thank Al Tarek for inviting us to be a part of the initiatives that he is beginning to work on through We Can Partners, which is going to help expand and build a strong awareness behind these ideas that you just shared with us today. We definitely look forward to coming up with some ways in which we can be able to partner and provide the kind of information that's important for our communities to see the differences of lifestyles that are uniquely the same. We thank you, Al.
No problem.
It's been